And Paul Martin, for example, whose company was registered in Bahamas. Excuse me. I'm sorry, but we have to continue with the orders of the day. And the members' time is up as well. So there will be 5 minutes for questions after question period when this topic comes before the House again.
Député, the honourable member for Nunavut.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand today to honour my father, Baptiste, and all Inuit of his generation. They were born and raised on the land and survived only because of what they learned from their forebears. This long line of inherited insight enabled intelligence and skill development among Inuit and served as a true form of evidence-based knowledge. One of my dad's favorite sayings is, "There's no such thing as can't." Living by these words, his intelligence and persistence allowed him to provide solutions to the most difficult problems. Inuit have survived following similar principles, and with a strong sense of community to unite them, they tackled tough circumstances together. They worked together, caring for and respecting each other, and were always open to new and better ways of doing things. This is the kind of mentality that must persist in our future generations. Dad, I'm so very grateful and proud of you and your generation. Naglagi vagi atata.
The honourable member for Surrey Centre.
As a hockey dad, I know that it's every Canadian kid's dream to be in the NHL. One such dream is Surrey's own 6'4", Edmonton Oiler number 54, Jajar Kara. He started playing hockey on the streets of Surrey, learning to skate, and then getting drafted to the Edmonton Oilers. On January 16th, he scored his first NHL goal on the Arizona Coyotes. In the same vein, I watched another kid grow up with a similar passion for hockey. But instead of playing, he loved his play-by-play commentating. Many told him his dream was impossible, but he was never deterred. Harner Ryan created his own show, Hockey Night in Canada Punjabi Edition, which became infamous for his Banino, 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 Banino call last year. And now he's become the first Sikh to broadcast an NHL game in English. Congratulations, Jajar and Harner Ryan, two up-and-comers that show us all that in Canada, everything is possible.
The honourable member for Langley Aldergrove.
Mr. Speaker, I had the great opportunity to meet with grade 5-6 students at Langley Christian and West Langley Elementary Schools. Some of Canada's brightest minds attend these schools and will be tomorrow's leaders in science, medicine, agriculture, engineering, trades, teachers, astronauts, and yes, Canada's first Prime Minister from beautiful Langley Aldergrove. These exceptional students had great questions. They asked what an MP does. They asked about Canada's immigration and refugee policies, and they want the system to be fair and safe. They ask about religious freedoms, and they want protection for all faiths in Canada. They want a future with opportunities for them with good paying jobs. They don't want the government to borrow away their future with growing deficits that they'll have to pay back with huge tax increases. They also want the government to keep its promises. I enjoyed meeting those students. I know they'll work hard and study hard. It's now our responsibility to make sure these students have opportunities for a safe, prosperous future. Thank you so much.
Honourable member for York Centre.
Mr. Speaker, on February 6th, a McGill Student Society representative incited violence against Jewish students, tweeting, "Punch a Zionist today." On the 19th, mezuzahs were ripped off of door frames and anti-Semitic messages were found in Toronto. On the 22nd, a swastika and the words, "Gas the Jews," were found spray-painted in Hamilton. On the 27th, swastikas were found on classroom walls at York University. On the 28th, the Calgary Jewish Community Centre received a bomb threat. And today, Jewish community centres in London and Toronto were threatened and evacuated. This is just some of the recent hate targeting Jewish Canadians. And I also recognise the growing hate being targeted at Muslim Canadians. Condemning these actions is not enough. We must ensure that our legal system is empowered to act against these incidents and that justice is upheld.
Honourable member for Port Moody Coquitlam.
Mr. Speaker, each year during Waste Reduction Week, elementary students in Port Moody Coquitlam participate in my annual Litterless Lunch Challenge. Many people don't realize that an average elementary school produces over 20,000 pounds of lunch waste annually. With my Litterless Lunch Challenge, students are encouraged to pack litter-free lunches and make Waste Reduction Week a part of their everyday routine. This year, more than 530 students took up the challenge, and 2 winning classes set a new record, going 99% litter-free. Congratulations to Madame Boulanger's grade 4-5 class at École Rochester in Coquitlam and Miss Ogilvy's grade 4-5 class at Heritage Mountain in Port Moody. A big thanks to all the students, teachers, and parents who participated in this year's Litterless Lunch Challenge. I hope this encourages you to continue your efforts throughout the year.
The honourable member for Scarborough North.
Mr. Speaker, last month the Scarborough Centennial Branch 614 of the Royal Canadian Legion celebrated their 50th anniversary. Named in honor of the Canadian Centennial, the branch began with 51 prospective members in 1967 and has since grown to 386 members who are part of Canada's largest organization for veterans and their families. Not only do Legion members support the brave men and women who serve our great country, they also teach our youth to remember those who made the ultimate sacrifice. Every year, Branch 614 distributes poppies in local schools to ensure that future generations never forget. Over the decades, the branch has fundraised to give back to the community, partnering with other branches to raise over $100,000 for the Scarborough Hospital. Nous devrions, en tant que Canadiens.
As Canadians, we should be proud of the important work that the Legions are doing all across the country. I congratulate the President Wayne Hayes, as well as June Hayes, and all the members of this Legion for their 50 years of service and social action. Thank you.
The honourable member for South Surrey White Rock.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise in this House today in recognition of March 8th as International Women's Day, a day in which we celebrate the contributions and achievements of women from all around the world. It is also a day that reminds us of the women and young girls that need our support, the women who are fleeing persecution, the women who are trying to survive in war-torn countries, the women who are exploited through human trafficking, domestic violence, sexual assault, and rape, the women who struggle to feed their children and find safe shelter or try to access education. So as we celebrate all that has been achieved over the years, let us remember how much we have yet to do. It is our responsibility as women and members of a global family to help those who continue to struggle. We should not and cannot stop until all of us are on an equal footing with equal opportunities and equal rights.
The honourable member for Don Valley East.
Mr. Speaker, founded in 2001 and located in my riding of Don Valley East, Communication Disability Access Canada is a national not-for-profit organization that promotes accessibility, inclusion, and human rights for people with speech and language disabilities.
There are over 400,000 Canadians who have speech, language, or communication difficulties that are not always caused by hearing loss. Anyone suffering from communication problems is protected under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
People experience discrimination when looking for jobs and accessing other social services. It is therefore important to have a national strategy to ensure consistency in services available to anyone with speech and language disabilities, because accessibility, Mr. Speaker, is a human right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Sydney Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the 8 students in grade 11 and 12 visiting Ottawa today from Wagmatcook, a beautiful First Nations community nestled on the Bedore Lakes in my riding. The students are in the nation's capital today to learn more about leadership, Canadian politics, and to see some of the wonderful landmarks here in Ottawa. Joined by the students are teachers Vince Budge, Jackie McLennan, Wagmatcook CEO Brian Arbonat. The group has joined us here today in this chamber to witness question period, and I'm sure they will be impressed. Mr. Speaker, when members of this House and their families come to visit our wonderful island of Cape Breton, I invite them to drop in the Wagmatcook Culture and Heritage Centre to learn more about the language and the history of the Mi'kmaq people, and also have a delicious meal at the restaurant overlooking the beautiful Bedore Lakes. So I ask members of the House to welcome these students, our future leaders, Parliament Hill.
The honourable member for Grand Prairie Mackenzie.
Mr. Speaker, in 2015, Constable David Wynne was shot and killed in the line of duty. This incident was completely preventable. His killer was out on bail at the time, notwithstanding that he had 50 prior criminal convictions, 38 outstanding charges, and several failures to appear. Yet due to a loophole in the criminal code, none of that was brought to the attention of the judge at the bail application hearing. Today, Shelley McInnes Wynne is in Ottawa to draw attention to legislation that my colleagues have proposed that would close the loophole that cost her husband his life. In the past, the Justice Minister has said that she will oppose this legislation. But I wonder today if she will put aside partisan politics. Yes, she is on the red team and my colleagues are on the blue team. But I wonder if she would consider the good that we can do by working together in the to honor the memory of Constable Wynne and ensure that no family ever suffers such a great a loss as to know that their loved one's death could have been prevented if only this law had been passed.
Member for Kitchener Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to welcome the University of Waterloo to Parliament Hill. The University of Waterloo is celebrating its 60th anniversary this year. L'université est ici aujourd'hui.
The university is here today to celebrate their history of disruptive innovation and entrepreneurship.
Well versed on the subject, Mr. Speaker, as they were once again ranked as Canada's most innovative university, a title they have held for 25 years straight.
I would like to invite my colleagues to join us at the parliamentary dining room tonight in order to meet with these Canadian innovation leaders.
Also, Mr. Speaker, I would like to take a moment to welcome representatives from the Waterloo Regional Police who are on Parliament Hill today, along with their colleagues from across the country.
I'm sure that all members will join me in thanking these members of the police force for their hard work ensuring the safety of our communities. Honourable member for Rivière-des-Mille-Îles. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One day before International Women's Day, words cannot express my enormous gratitude to all the women who came before me. It was the encouragement, openness, and advice of my mother and grandmother that made me the woman that I am today. I would also like to pay tribute to my father, with whom I worked for several years in the family business. My parents always taught me to strive to success by teaching me how to live a good life. Mr. Speaker, International Women's Day is a day for us to appreciate the progress that we've made toward gender equality, but it's also a day to raise awareness about the work we still have to do as a society. We need to remain vigilant and to denounce intolerance, sexism, and injustice. Together, we must allow all members of our society, regardless of their gender, origin, culture, or religion, to contribute to our great country. Thank you.
Honourable member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Mr. Speaker, this Liberal government claims to be open and transparent, yet when we asked for the numbers on how much this federal carbon tax will cost Canadians, they blacked out the numbers in the answer provided. This Liberal government claims they want to create jobs, but my riding of Sarnia-Lambton has decisions pending on a Nova project and 2 other major energy projects that will create thousands of jobs if they're built here. But without certainty about how much extra cost the carbon tax will add, they're considering going to the United States, and still the Minister of the Environment has done nothing to reassure them or my constituents. This Liberal government claims they want to help the middle class and those hoping to join them. So why don't they tell us how much money this carbon tax is going to take out of the pockets of the middle class and those hoping to join them, and the small businesses that are going to go out of business? Why the carbon tax cover-up?
The honourable member for Oakville North Burlington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Equal Voice has coordinated an historic initiative, Daughters of the Vote, to celebrate 100 years of some women's right to vote and to inspire women to be equal participants at every political decision-making table in the country. Tomorrow, one young woman from every federal riding in Canada will be taking their MP seat in Parliament. These 338 emerging leaders have come to share their vision for Canada. I'm proud to welcome Tarini Sharma to Ottawa as Oakville North Burlington's Daughter of the Vote. Tomorrow in my riding, I will be launching the Young Women in Leadership program to offer young women in my community the opportunity to job shadow in a local business or organization to gain career experience and confidence, an idea that came from a roundtable on women's empowerment that I hosted on International Women's Day last year. Today and tomorrow, we celebrate these young women.
Bravo.
Honourable member for Victoria.
At the end of World War II, the federal government began investing in affordable housing in recognition of the fact that the market alone could not provide homes for all Canadians. For decades after, the federal government helped to build much of the social and cooperative housing that we still see standing in our communities today. But starting in the late 1980s, subsequent governments reduced the federal role in building affordable housing. The consequences of this lack of investment are now painfully evident in the city of Victoria, where we now have the lowest vacancy rate in Victoria and some of the highest rents and housing prices. Many families and seniors cannot find housing at all. Victoria's economy is growing. We have a thriving high-tech sector and young families trying to build their careers and start families. We cannot let this housing divide hold our cities back. Our municipalities and provincial governments simply cannot go it alone. Mr. Speaker, I'm calling on the government to deliver a significant capital investment in social housing infrastructure in the upcoming budget and to restore the federal government's role as a leader in making sure all Canadians have a safe place to call home.
Colleagues know that we don't recognize the presence or the absence of a member in the chamber. Therefore, I can say that I'm delighted to recognize the honourable member from Abbotsford.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it is so good to be back in this House with my parliamentary family. Colleagues, thank you for your kind words and prayers. Very much appreciated. But alas, upon my return, I find that the ship of state has run aground, running a massive iceberg of deficits and broken promises.
Climate change.
Listing to the left, the good ship Sunny Waves is awash in a sea of red ink and carbon taxes. Casting about for someone to blame, the captain has thrown his hapless first mate for democratic reform overboard. 2 other shipmates have been dispatched on the diplomatic lifeboats McCallum and Dion. Diving for the last lifeboat, the captain realizes he doesn't have the cash for access and was last seen elbowing his way into the front of the line. This is a disaster of titanic proportions. As the Panic Caucus Orchestra plays and the good ship Sunny Waves slowly sinks under the sea, I can hear the captain singing, "My heart will go on." Mr. Speaker, it's so good to be back in this House.
député de Châteauguay-Lacroix.
The Honourable Member for Châteauguay-Lacroix. Mr. Speaker, allow me to take a moment to express our profound sadness at the death of Constable Richet Dubuc of the Champlain Detachment in Division C of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Constable Dubuc, 42, died of his injuries following a car accident on the evening of March 6th near Saint-Bernard-de-la-Colle in my riding. He was a husband, a father of 4, and a native of Joliette. He had 7 years of service with the RCMP, having first joined in New Brunswick. He had only been with the Champlain Detachment since last January. We grieve along with his wife and 4 children. And we know that the entire police community, particularly in Quebec, is going through a very difficult time. On behalf of all members and all Canadians, we express our sincere condolences to the family, friends, and colleagues of Constable Dubuc. Our thoughts and prayers are with you.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Je crois qu'on comprend qu'il y a eu.
I believe that there have been discussions between the representatives of all parties and that there is consent to observe a moment of silence in honor of the RCMP officer who lost his life in Saint-Bernard-de-la-Colle in Quebec.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Questions orales, oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, it is the first time in the history of Canada that a Prime Minister is the subject of 2 official inquiries from an Ethics Commissioner. This is a serious situation. The Prime Minister must tell the truth to Canadians. Has someone from the Prime Minister's office or the Privy Council office indicated that what happened was against the rules? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. As I've already said many times, this was a personal family trip, and I'm always happy to answer all the questions of the Ethics Commissioner.
Position.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Minister is answering the Ethics Commissioner's questions, but the Prime Minister also has a constitutional responsibility to be accountable to Canadians in this House, and so we're asking him these questions on behalf of Canadians. After all, it was actually this Prime Minister who said, quote, as the head of government, the Prime Minister represents all Canadians and should be directly accountable to them. It was him that said it. So does he still believe that, or was that just a campaign slogan?
Right. Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Every day, Mr. Speaker, this government works hard to serve Canadians, to make sure that we're growing the middle class and supporting those working hard to join it. Of course, we take our responsibilities very, very seriously and continue to demonstrate the kind of openness and transparency that Canadians expect of this government, particularly after 10 years of a government that didn't do a good job at that.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, there are now dozens and dozens of serious criminal cases that are being thrown out of court, in part because the Liberals haven't appointed judges to deal with them. In one case, a man is accused of breaking his 2-week-old baby's ankles, and he has had his criminal charge stayed, and he may never face justice. The irony is, the person in charge of this in the Prime Minister's office did one thing before she left, she made sure she had her own appointment as the parachute Liberal candidate. This does not reflect the priorities of Canadians, Mr. Speaker. When will the Prime Minister get to work and appoint judges so criminals stop going free?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, over the past year, we've made significant appointments right across the country, including 13 judicial appointments in Alberta. The fact is, in the over 100 appointments that we've made since we've come in through a new process that demonstrates the openness and the diversity of Canada, we're happy that over 60% of our appointments were women, that 15% of the appointments are visible minority, that over 10% are actually Indigenous Canadians, that we have Canadians living with disabilities well represented. We are demonstrating the kind of openness, transparency, and diversity that we know is a great strength for Canada.
Member for Abbotsford.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it really is good to be back. I had assumed that during my absence, the Liberals would finally come clean on the actual cost of their massive new carbon tax. Day after day, I watched the minister give evasive and non-transparent answers to simple questions. Clearly, the minister has something to hide and is afraid to tell us how badly the carbon tax will hurt. To the Prime Minister, why the cover-up, and when will he finally release the unredacted report outlining the harm this tax will inflict on Canadians?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite, it's wonderful to see him back in the House, but he didn't use his downtime to understand what the Conservatives did not understand for 10 years in government, which is that investing in reducing our carbon emissions, in a cleaner economy, is actually a way of creating opportunities for Canadians, opportunities to grow the economy. Mr. Speaker, we know that leading the way on the new economy, on the new clean jobs that are coming, is exactly how we will create the kinds of opportunities for the middle class and those working hard to join them that Canadians expect.
Member for Abbotsford.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Liberal environment record is a train wreck. We only have to look at Ontario, where Kathleen Wynne's skyrocketing electricity rates are bankrupting hardworking Canadians. The Prime Minister's reckless carbon tax plan follows the same blueprint. In the words of the irrepressible Rex Murphy, green dreams have been a disaster for Ontario. The last thing Canadians need is even higher energy costs. When will the Liberals finally come clean, release their carbon tax report, and let Canadians judge for themselves?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Canadians did judge for themselves in the 2015 election, where they rejected a vision that did not understand that the way to build a strong economy is to invest in a cleaner environment. Canadians know that reducing carbon pollution, investing in the clean, green jobs of the future is exactly how we are going to grow the economy for the future. Not only did that government not get anything done on the environment, but that also hurt the economic growth of this country. This government gets that. That's why we're moving forward in responsible ways to create better jobs and a cleaner environment for future generations.
Minister loves to claim that he wants tax fairness, but one of the first decisions this Liberal government made was to flip-flop on a clear promise to close the CEO stock option tax loophole. Will the Prime Minister and his Liberals vote in favour of the NDP motion, and will they flip to finally close the CEO stock option tax loophole, take aggressive action to tackle tax havens, renegotiate treaties that currently help tax evaders, and end penalty-free amnesty deals for tax evasion? Will they do that in the budget? And by the way, when's the budget?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the very first thing we did was lower taxes on the middle class and raise them on the wealthiest 1%. We got elected on a clear commitment to help the middle class, and that's exactly what we are doing. We're ensuring that 9 out of 10 Canadian families do better with the new Canada Child Benefit that's going to lift 300,000 kids out of poverty. These are the kinds of measures that we put forward that are investing both in middle-class families and in their future through historic infrastructure investments. These are the promises we're focused on delivering for Canadians. That's what Canadians expect.
Member for Outremont.
They're on stock options.
Mr. Speaker, what we saw with the KPMG deal is that there are some rules for the rich and those close to power, and those for everybody else. If you are the owner of a family business and you make a mistake when filing your taxes, good luck, because the government is going to come after you. If you're a millionaire who decides not to pay taxes, no problem. The government will protect you. Can the Prime Minister guarantee that his government will never again offer this type of deal to white-collar criminals? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the member should stay up to date. Currently, we are working on this file. We take the KPMG issue very seriously, and we take very seriously the issue of tax evasion. That's why in the last budget we invested $444 million into the Canada Revenue Agency in order to track down tax fraudsters. Everybody should pay their taxes, and that is exactly what we are making sure will happen. The Honourable Member for Tremont.
No action and charges. Les Canadiens veulent plus que des belles paroles.
Canadians want more than rhetoric. Tax fairness means that no matter who you are or how much you make, you should never be above the law. If the Prime Minister really wants to support tax fairness, will he ask the Minister of Justice to look into laying criminal charges against people involved in the KPMG tax sham? Or is this yet again just empty rhetoric? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Once more, Mr. Speaker, the member should keep up to date with the facts. The Canada Revenue Agency is currently looking into KPMG. We take this government's responsibilities very seriously when it comes to bringing before the courts people who participate in tax evasion and tax avoidance. That's a principle that we maintain, and that's something that we work on every day, especially since we invested $444 million more in the last budget to do so. The member for Tremont.
Criminal case, and he knows it. Let me raise another related issue, Mr. Speaker. At a time when the term fake news is bandied about, when accusations of media bias risk confidence of the public in a free and independent press, we've all got to stand up against interference with the media. So, does the Prime Minister believe that it is right for Revenue Canada to pay for government ads in newspapers and disguise them to look like real news articles? Does the Prime Minister find this accessible? Does the Prime Minister find this acceptable? Yes or no?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the government uses a broad range of ways to communicate with Canadians. We need to make sure that Canadians know that we're working hard for them every single day. These are the things that matter. Reaching out through community newspapers, through a broad range of media organizations is an effective way of ensuring Canadians get the facts and understand what their opportunities and options are.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. We'll remember that this government was elected by promising a modest deficit of $10 billion, and the reality is that there's a deficit that is 3 times higher, and the only game plan that they have to come back to balanced books is to do that in 2055. It makes no sense at all. The Minister of Finance will table his budget at some point, but can the minister assure us that he's not going to take away tax credits that affect Canadians directly and that they will not impose more taxes on Canadians in the next budget? The Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, I can assure you that we are going to continue working on our program, which is intended to improve the situation of the middle class and to improve our economic growth. We are going to make sure there are more jobs throughout our entire country, and that way we will have more opportunities for everybody, including our children and grandchildren. That is what we are going to do. The member for Louis Saint Laurent. What you're doing is you're sending the bill to our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren who have not yet been born, who are going to have to pay for this government's mismanagement. Just like 40 years ago, the father of the current Prime Minister left a sad inheritance to Canadians. Will the Minister of Finance assure us of just one thing? The tax credits, especially when it comes to income splitting for seniors, can he confirm that he will not touch that advantage for seniors in the next budget? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, what I can say is that we are going to continue implementing our program to help seniors and the middle class. That is very important. With higher growth, we will have many more opportunities in the future. That is very important. With our investments, we will have a situation where we can do more for Canadian families throughout our country. We know that we've had more jobs created in the last 6 months than since 2002. Things are looking good for Canadians.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, the Senate committee released a report on the Liberals' infrastructure plan. It mirrors earlier comments from the parliamentary budget officer. They found, quote, the Liberals have not developed a strategic infrastructure plan, that municipalities have raised several concerns about the lack of transparency and onerous application process, and this is the third independent report that raises serious concerns about the Liberals' infrastructure plan. When will the minister start listening and develop a transparent and accountable plan that actually creates jobs and gets infrastructure built?
Honourable Minister of Infrastructure and Communities.
Speaker, since taking office, we have worked with provinces and municipalities and territories and streamlined approvals as part of Phase 1 Clean Water, Wastewater and Public Transit Infrastructure Fund was designed based on feedback from provinces, municipalities and territories. Municipalities across the country and FCM has applauded the simplicity of the new programs, and we are delivering on the commitments that we made to Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Richmond-Athabasca. Mr. Speaker, the Senate committee's report is clear and unambiguous, no matter what the minister thinks of it. The Liberals have not developed a strategic plan. The Liberals are using a complex, uncoordinated approach, and from the point of view of municipalities, this complexity is disconcerting. We didn't make it up, it's in the report. What the report says is that the Liberals are not transparent, that municipalities are getting lost in these programs, and that jobs have not materialized. Will the minister admit that his program is just not working, or will he close his eyes on this situation and repeat again and again that everything is fine?
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to working in collaboration and partnership with provinces, municipalities and territories, we take no lesson from the previous government. They had no relationship with those organizations. We are working on delivering the historic commitment that we made. $180 billion over 12 years, 1,400 projects approved with a combined investment of $14 billion, the majority of that money going to municipalities from coast to coast to coast. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Carleton.
Mr. Speaker, according to Wikipedia, carbon black is a material produced by the incomplete combustion of heavy petroleum products such as coal tar. Now, carbon black is used to produce pigment for ink, the kind of ink the government is using to black out the cost of the carbon tax. My question is, how many tons of GHGs were emitted to produce the ink to cover up the cost of the carbon tax?
Honourable Minister of Environment.
Mr. Speaker, I'm delighted to see the Member of Parliament for Abbotsford back in the House. I'm also, I see there's now a tag team where we have the Member of Abbotsford with the Member of Carleton saying the same thing.
Order. We're all very happy about these things, of course, but let's let the Minister of Environment finish her answer.
I'm just going to keep on repeating what I continue to repeat, that putting a price on carbon pollution makes good business sense. It's going to create good jobs, it's going to help create a clean growth economy, and it's going to ensure a better future for our kids.
Honourable Member for Carleton. Order.
Well, they thought they were going to have an easy day over there today, but not so fast, Mr. Speaker. Earlier today, the Prime Minister managed to sandwich into one answer both his love of the middle class and transparency and openness while he's about to vote for a motion on opposing the release of transparent information on the cost to the middle class of his very own carbon tax, Mr. Speaker. Will he do as he promised during the election and vote today to end the carbon tax cover-up so that middle-class Canadians will finally know what they will pay in new Liberal taxes.
The Honourable Minister of Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me talk about costs. Let's talk about the cost of inaction when it comes to tackling climate change. We know that the costs right now have risen to $1 billion per year for Canadian taxpayers. That's to cover costs of floods, that's to cover costs of forest fires, that's to cover the cost of droughts. We know that we need to take action on climate change because it's the right thing to do, because it will help us ensure that we have a sustainable future, and it's going to create good jobs and create economic growth.
Here, here. Order.
The Honourable Member for Sherbrooke. Mr. Speaker, do you know who gave an external legal opinion on KPMG's tax scheme? Denton's legal firm. Do you know who organizes exclusive events during international tax conferences? Denton's. Do you know who participated in one of these exclusive events last fall? Judge Bocock from the Canadian Tax Court. And do you know who is the judge managing the Cooper family's case when it comes to the family that used the KPMG tax scheme? Yes, Judge Bocock. 2 + 2 is 4, and Canadians are not dupes. Does the minister believe that the Canadian Judicial Council should look into the inappropriate behavior of this judge? The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, it is thanks to the efforts of the Canada Revenue Agency that these schemes for tax evasion abroad were discovered. My colleague knows very well that in the case of KPMG, it is an active file that is currently before the courts, and we cannot reveal any information that could compromise our efforts. I can assure you that there is a preliminary inquiry into structures set up abroad on the Isle of Man. The work is being done, and we're going to conduct it the way we promised we would do during the election campaign. The Honourable Member for Rosemont-Patrie. Mr. Speaker, when the Liberal government lets a KPMG hide money for a rich client on the Isle of Man, is there any thought of the message that it is sending to honest taxpayers? It's because of these types of practices that we have a hard time taking care of our seniors or supporting our students. The agreements with tax havens is nothing more than robbery. Companies pay peanuts over there and pay nothing here. Will the Liberal government review these agreements to ensure that these companies finally pay their fair share just like everybody else? The Honourable Minister for National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, I am very happy to be able to give information to my colleague on the other side. I can tell you that the agency is doing a preliminary inquiry into the structures set up abroad on the Isle of Man. $444 million invested into the agency allowed us to hire many more investigators, and we have been able to recover $13 million last year. The work has begun, and we are going to keep working on it until it is done.
Caribou.
Mr. Speaker, the saga of the sale of the BC retirement homes to mysterious Chinese investors is getting murkier. We know the Prime Minister was approached at a Cash for Access fundraiser regarding this deal. Yesterday, the Innovation Minister had to stand in this House and apologize for misleading Canadians regarding the true ownership, and 20 operating licenses were issued in 1 week. Clearly, the fix was in. One of the residents phoned me here, and she said she's very worried about this particular issue and how it will affect vulnerable seniors. So I will ask the Minister again, will he finally show some respect and tell these seniors who owns their home?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, again, I don't understand why the member opposite is opposed to global investment in Canada. Investment is so critical for growing our economy and creating jobs and opportunities for Canadians. With regards to the specific transaction, we reviewed it under the Investment Canada Act. We did our due diligence, and we determined it was in our overall net economic benefit. And the additional resources that Cedar Tree will provide retirement concepts for expansion will create opportunities, growth, and jobs, Mr. Speaker. That's good for British Columbia. That's good for the economy.
The member for Caribou, Prince George.
Speaker, the reality is what this government has done is put tens of thousands of seniors' homes and care in jeopardy. Nobody will do business with en banc insurance because of the murky ownership, not even Wall Street firms. But this Prime Minister will. after lobbying at one of his many Cash for Access events, and after filling the coffers of the Liberal Party, Ong Bong was fast-tracked to buy seniors' care facilities in BC. The minister then misled Canadians into thinking that these senior homes would be owned by Canadians. But yesterday, he admitted that this wasn't true. Will the minister finally tell Canadians who owns Ong Bong Insurance?
Minister of Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, Retirement Concepts now is managed by Canadians. It's going to be operated by Canadians to serve Canadians. They will have additional resources by Cedar Tree. These additional resources will allow them to expand, and when they expand, that will create opportunities for seniors, and these additional resources will also create economic opportunities like good quality jobs, Mr. Speaker. We are a government that supports global investment. We believe in growing the economy. We believe in supporting the healthcare sector, and we believe this is an overall net economic benefit. That is why we approve this transaction.
The member for Lévis-Lobinière. Mr. Speaker, a person of real integrity and transparency doesn't get caught red-handed repeatedly like this Prime Minister. His lack of judgment is quite apparent when I think of these little soirees for the privileged who pay $1,500 for private access or for helicopter rides that are against the rules. The more we get to know this Prime Minister, the more we realize that he thinks he is above the law. Mr. Speaker, can the Prime Minister stop practicing the art of rationalization and show transparency and integrity in all of the important decisions that he has to make in the interests of all Canadians? The Honourable House Leader. Mr. Speaker, we always work in the best interests of Canadians, and that is why we reduce taxes for the middle class. It is why we give more to families with children. The Prime Minister has said repeatedly that he will answer all of the questions of the Ethics Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Prairie McKenzie.
Well, Mr. Speaker, Canadians expect the Prime Minister to answer questions in this House. So let's review question period thus far. We have the Prime Minister who won't answer questions about his own ethical violations. We have the Finance Minister that continues in his carbon tax cover-up. We have the Minister of Industry that still won't admit to Canadians who he's selling our seniors' residence to. Mr. Speaker, the cover-ups, the misleading, quite frankly, the outright lack of integrity, that's what these Liberals have become. When will the Prime Minister start leading this government in the way that Canadians would expect, and when will he clean up this mess?
Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the opportunity to rise in this House and to remind Canadians exactly what this government's been doing. Unprecedented levels of consultations with Canadians, working better with provinces and territories and municipalities, making historic investments in infrastructure so that we can actually create the opportunities and make the investments Canadians need us to create. Lower taxes on middle-class Canadians by increasing taxes on the 1% of wealthiest Canadians. What did the Conservatives do? Voted against it every time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Laurier St. Marie, order. Mr. Speaker, given the actions taken yesterday by North Korea, it's even more important that the international community work towards nuclear disarmament. Hiding behind the treaty banning the production of fissile material is not enough. If we want to be rid of this threat, then we must be even more ambitious. So my question is simple. Will Canada participate in the nuclear disarmament discussions, which are being held later this month in New York? Yes or no? The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs. Thank you for the question. We are working hard to guarantee that our children inherit a nuclear-free world. That means making tangible progress. For the first time under our government, Canada has rallied countries to support a UN resolution calling for a treaty on banning the production of fissile material. This is a concrete action and a big step forward towards a nuclear-free world.
Lady Smith.
On the eve of International Women's Day, this government's failure to walk the talk on feminism is in the spotlight. A new report card from Oxfam finds little progress on nearly every front and condemns the government for its complete failure to take action on pay equity. Canadian women still earn just 74 cents for every dollar that a man makes, and we've fallen dramatically in international rankings. Does the minister really believe that women should wait even longer to be equal pay for work of equal value?
Honourable Minister for Employment.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our government knows that ensuring equal pay for work of equal value is critical to closing the gender wage gap, and that's why our government has moved forward to introduce proactive pay equity legislation, where we'll be engaging with stakeholders and experts during the policy process to ensure that the legislation meets the goal of ensuring the right of equal pay for work of equal value. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
For Hull.
Mr. Speaker, in my riding of Hull-Aylmer and across Canada, our plan to create long-term economic growth will help the middle class and those who are working hard to join it. Can the Finance Minister please update this House on our plan for growth for all Canadians? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to inform you that I will be presenting the next step in our middle class plan in this House on March 22nd, Wednesday at 4 o'clock. The 2017 budget will ensure our success in the economy of the future.
Second, at 4 p.m., I'll present the next steps in our plan for the middle class and those working hard to join it. Our budget will create jobs, invest in our communities, and I'm just going to keep talking. In neighborhoods.
The Honourable Member, I don't think so. The Honourable Member for Barrie Innisfil.
Hang on to your wallets, folks. First, it was the unsavory Liberal Cash for Access scheme, and now Markham Thornhill Liberal candidate Mary Ng is selling herself as the Liberal insider in the PMO who handpick members of Canada's Immigration and Refugee Board who make decisions on who can immigrate to Canada. But she only did this in the Chinese language version of her campaign news release. Mr. Speaker, to the Prime Minister, how can Canadians have confidence in the appointment process when Liberal candidate Mary Ng is suggesting to a select group of voters that she will have influence over the fate of their immigration applications as a Member of Parliament?
Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, as we committed to Canadians, we introduced a new government-wide appointments process that is open, transparent, and merit-based. Our approach will result in the recommendations of high-quality candidates who achieve gender parity and truly reflect Canada's diversity. The new selection process reflects the fundamental role that many Canadians play in our democracy as they serve on commissions, boards, crown corporations, agencies, and tribunals across the countries. All opportunities to serve are transparently available online. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Nobody's buying that. Mr. Speaker, in true Liberal fashion, Liberal candidate and former Director of Appointments to the Prime Minister, Mary Ng, started campaigning before she pushed John McCallum out the door. Mary Ng would have overseen many appointments in the Prime Minister's office, but chose to highlight in her foreign language campaign release that she was responsible for matters regarding the appointment of members to the Immigration and Refugee Board. Can the Immigration Minister ensure that the integrity of the Immigration and Refugee Board has not been compromised as a result of Mary Ng's political ambitions?
Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, we're actually very proud of the new process that we have introduced so that Canadians from coast to coast to coast can actually apply. We recognize the importance of these roles within government and these opportunities, and that's why all opportunities to apply are available online. I encourage Canadians to apply. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, we know the Prime Minister believes he can pick and choose how to interpret the laws and regulations members of this House are sworn to respect. We've seen the PM and members of Cabinet ignore, actually break his own ethics guidelines and his promises. Is that why, after a year and a half in majority government, the PM has yet to fill vacant watchdog positions that govern elections, official languages, lobbying, and ethics? Does the PM believe it's more important to get his appointment secretary a parachuted seat in Parliament than appointing watchdogs who might call him to account?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, while the Conservatives were busy making appointments at the 11th hour, this government is committed to a new process, a merit-based process where we look at gender parity, where we look at bilingualism, where we look at the importance of our diversity. This government recognizes that diversity is our strength, and that's why we have introduced a new merit-based appointment process, exactly what we committed to Canadians. We have delivered on. All opportunities are available online, and I encourage Canadians to apply. Thank you, Mr.
The honourable member for Thornhill. Order.
It's only a year and a half till the next election, Mr. Speaker. As well, Mr. Speaker, the PM has yet to explain the logic that led to the highly unusual house cleaning of two sitting cabinet ministers to appointments he characterized as ambassadorial. Not only was the dual assignment of Stéphane Dion to Germany and the EU characterized as amateur hour by a former Canadian ambassador, but then we learned the Liberal Order in Council describes both men merely as special advisors to the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Mr. Speaker, again to the Prime Minister, where's the logic? Where is the traditional diplomatic respect to our host?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to quote the Leader of the Official Opposition. In January, she said, and I quote, "Canadians want and need passionate people to represent them. People who understand the issues in minute detail and vigorously defend their positions." Speaking of Monsieur Dion, she added, "The member opposite epitomized all that and more." I agree. Canadians can be assured that we will be well represented by Monsieur Dion in Berlin and Brussels.
The honourable member for Drummond. Mr. Speaker, according to a report from the Commissioner of Official Languages, the Minister of Immigration is not respecting the Official Languages Act. Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada is not respecting the equality of both official languages because the French permanent residency test is costlier and less accessible than the English test. To date, the minister has done nothing to fix this situation. Does the minister intend to follow through on the Commissioner's recommendations to make sure that his department is respecting the Official Languages Act?
Honourable Minister of Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very much committed to the Official Languages Act, and my department is working very closely to make sure that the availability and costs between the two official language tests are equal. My department is working very, very closely with the businesses and organizations that determine and offer these tests to potential applicants to immigration services, and we're working very closely with them to address this issue.
Honourable member for Vancouver Kingsway.
Mr. Speaker, increasing numbers of Canadians are suffering from Lyme disease and the lack of effective treatment. Most people are forced to seek health care outside of Canada at huge personal expense. Yet, this government's proposed framework fails to meet the needs of patients and their families. In fact, over 30,000 Canadians have signed a petition to scrap the government's plan. So will the government commit to creating a framework for Lyme disease that actually provides the care so desperately needed?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, our government recognizes the impact that Lyme disease has on Canadians and their families. We had discussions at a conference to develop a federal framework on Lyme disease that was held last year with over 500 people participating. As a result of that, there is a framework available online that's been open for consultation until tomorrow. It's had great interaction with a number of members of this House as well as the general public. We are going to consider all input on the final draft version, and that will be posted in May of 2017.
The honourable member for Niagara Falls.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During their first year in government, the Liberals only appointed 34 Superior Court judges. In the previous year, our Conservative government appointed 96 judges. Now, Mr. Speaker, every day we're seeing evidence that the Liberals are making a mess of our judicial system. I want to know from them, why are they putting it at risk? When are they going to get their act together?
Honourable Minister of Justice.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I take incredibly seriously the opportunity that I have to appoint Superior Court justices across the country. I'm proud of the appointments that I've made thus far, and I am very proud of the renewed judicial appointments process, including the Judicial Advisory Commission or councils that will provide recommended and highly recommended candidates to sit on our Superior Courts. We are doing this to ensure diversity in terms of the judges that sit on the Superior Courts that represent the face of Canada Canada, and we will be making judicial appointments on an ongoing basis in the near future.
Honourable member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, today I had the honour to stand with Constable Wynn's widow, who was in Ottawa, to talk about the importance of Wynn's Law. Wynn's Law would close a loophole in the criminal code that helped cost Constable Wynn his life. I know that the Minister of Justice met with Ms. McInnes Wynn, and I thank her for that. But since the Minister opposes Wynn's Law, can the Minister explain just when it's okay for the criminal history of a bail applicant not to be disclosed?
Honourable Minister of Justice.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, as the member opposite said, I had the great pleasure to sit down with Mrs. Wynn, and I want to reiterate in this House an acknowledgement and great empathy for the loss that she has suffered. We spoke about what we're doing, what I'm committed to doing in terms of modernizing the criminal justice system, improving the efficiencies and effectiveness, and ensuring that we look at bail reform. That is why I'm working with my counterparts in the provinces and territories. That is why we've empowered the Steering Committee on Justice Efficiencies to look at specific aspects of bail reform, and we are going to continue to move forward collaboratively.
The honourable member for York Simcoe.
The Liberal war on history is marching relentlessly forward. The most recent victim, a Canadian crusader for human rights and a pioneer in the global struggle against apartheid in South Africa, a champion of the little guy, he gave us our Canadian Bill of Rights. That's why the Government of Canada honoured his legacy by establishing the John Diefenbaker Defender of Human Rights and Freedom Award. It has recognized individuals fighting for freedom and democracy around the world. Yet, as they did with the Canada 150 medals, this Liberal government is in the process of abolishing that John Diefenbaker Award. Why this Liberal war on history?
And you have Denise Ketterman, Minister of Canadian Heritage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canada's 150th anniversary of Confederation is a unique opportunity to bring Canadians together and strengthen our connection to our communities by inspiring a vision of a vibrant, diverse, and inclusive country. As part of the celebration, we're focusing on engaging young people, celebrating diversity and inclusion, and encouraging national reconciliation with Indigenous people of this land. Our government is proud to support and promote initiatives that will inspire a generation of Canadians to help build Canada's future and creating a lasting economic, cultural, and social legacy for our country. Thank you.
Honourable member for Miramichi, Grand Lake.
Mr. Speaker, the Anderson Bridge, which spans the southwest Miramichi River, is a piece of strategic infrastructure for the security and economy of communities on both sides of this majestic river.
The safety and capacity of the bridge has been downgraded due to the failing 60-year-old structure. Can the Minister of Infrastructure and Communities update this House as to how our infrastructure program will contribute to the upgrade of this bridge? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the member for Miramichi Grand Lake for his hard work on behalf of his constituents. Last week, our government, in collaboration with the government of New Brunswick, announced more than $94 million in combined funding to replace Anderson River Bridge. This investment will ensure that the bridge remains a key link for travel, trade, and a daily life between northern and southern New Brunswick for years to come. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Fort McMurray, Cold Lake.
Mr. Speaker, last week the Minister of Finance showed up in my riding to announce he was failing Northern Albertans. Instead of adopting the recommendations of Trade Tribunal about the drywall tariff, he offered half measures. Mr. Speaker, Liberal duties on drywall are hurting all Western Canadians and those rebuilding their lives in Fort McMurray. Why is the Minister ignoring the recommendations of the Tribunal and continue to collect massive amounts of new taxes from the people who are suffering?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I was very pleased to go to Fort McMurray last week, in particular to talk about how we can ensure that the people in Fort McMurray, as they rebuild their homes, as the drywall contractors, as they want to purchase drywall, have a stable market so they can understand the price of drywall. That's important. What we also did was we took the tariffs that had been levied for the 3 months before, and that $12 million, we said we're going to put it in a fund so that those people that had been harmed by fixed-price contracts could apply to get that money to help their families or to help the drywall contractors. We're proud to help the people of Fort McMurray in a time of challenge.
Honourable member for North Island, Powell River.
This government proposed the Ocean Protection Plan, promising a world-class spill response. People are watching on the ground. Yesterday, the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans said the Coast Guard and responders reacted very quickly to contain the spill, to clean up the spill. It took 9 hours for the first booms and few absorbent pads to be dispersed haphazardly and only near the fish pens. Is this what the minister considers a quick response? If this is Canada's world-class response, we may have a problem.
The Honourable Minister of Fisheries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we don't have a problem because this government is investing massively in marine safety and environmental protection. The Prime Minister was in British Columbia in November, announced a historic investment of $1.5 billion to ensure that the Canadian Coast Guard and Transport Canada can provide that world-class ocean protection that Canadians expect. Mr. Speaker, we'll continue to work with the provinces, Indigenous communities, and all those partners across the country to ensure that we have the best marine response system in the world.
The member for St. John's South Mount Pearl.
Mr. Speaker, marine incidents can happen anywhere in the world, and there is no one approach that works best in all cases. Today, the east coast of Canada has some of the busiest shipping routes in the country. Marine shipping has always been a part of Atlantic Canada's identity, which explains our region's strong history of and commitment to marine transportation safety. Can the minister please inform Canadians on some of the measures he is taking in my province of Newfoundland and Labrador and in the Maritimes?
Great question.
The Minister of Fisheries.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for that question. As he knows, Mr. Speaker, the Canadian Coast Guard is the backbone for one of the safest marine systems in the world. As I indicated earlier, the Prime Minister announced a historic investment to improve marine safety on all of Canada's coasts, and this will have a major impact in the great province of Newfoundland and Labrador, Mr. Speaker. We'll reopen the St. John's Maritime Rescue Subcenter closed by the previous government. This will boost emergency response capacity. We'll refurbish the St. Anthony Lifeboat Station, and what's more, Mr. Speaker, we're opening 2 new lifeboat stations in Newfoundland.
The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are facing a serious threat, the arrival of the Asian carp. After the Great Lakes and the Toronto area, it's now in the St. Lawrence River in Quebec. The federal government needs to speed up efforts to eradicate the carp, which is threatening our native fish species for sport and ice fishing. These are major economic drivers for our regions in Quebec. Mr. Speaker, will the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans take action and implement an effective intervention plan as soon as possible? The Honourable Minister of Fisheries. Mr. Speaker, it seems like my colleagues missed the last few days in the House to answer my colleague. The answer is yes, Mr. Speaker. We are taking these threats seriously, and that's why we're working with our partners, whether it be the provinces, whether it be the United States, not only to invest in the science that's needed to fight this threat, but also to improve the infrastructure to ensure that these invasive species don't get into Canadian waters. We will continue to improve that across Canada. The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Mr. Speaker, over 5 years after discovering the Isle of Man fraud, the government has still not placed criminal charges against KPMG. No. Instead, it's given them $92 million in contracts. That's our money. And yet, in a similar case in the United States, Mr. Speaker, they threatened to declare KPMG a criminal organization. They hit them with a $500 million fine. They shut down their tax division, and they charged 9 top leaders at KPMG, and 2 of them are now in prison. Will this government stop giving contracts to KPMG and charge this company, which helps the rich how to commit tax fraud? The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, I'll repeat this information for my colleague who doesn't seem to understand what I'm saying, that it's thanks to the efforts of the Canada Revenue Agency that the KPMG strategy was discovered outside of the country. The government has this, it is working on this. We can't give more information right now, but we will continue to work to respect the commitments we made in the last election. The Honourable Member for Joliette. Well, that's just ridiculous, Mr. Speaker. Canada is so buddy-buddy with the tax havens that it speaks for them at the IMF. This country is the spokesperson for tax havens, and that's no joke. It speaks on behalf of Barbados and the Bahamas and a dozen other tax havens. Is the government playing us for fools when it says that it's fighting tax fraud when it's actually the official spokesperson for tax havens? The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, we have invested historic amounts of money, $444 million last year in our first budget to fight tax fraud, and I will assure you that tax frauders won't be able to hide any longer, Mr. Speaker. We are taking this issue very seriously, and those who choose to participate in such strategies will suffer the consequences of their actions. Canadians expect nothing less from this government, Mr. Speaker. A point of order, the Honourable Member for Joliette. Yes, Mr. Speaker, I ask for unanimous consent to table the IMF documents which show how Canada speaks on behalf of tax havens. Apparently there is no unanimous consent. No. I've heard a no. Order.
I would like to draw to the attention of honourable members the presence in the gallery of the Honourable Bill Fraser, Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure, and Minister responsible for the Northern and Miramichi funds for the province of New Brunswick. Come in a Kansas.
It being 3:10 p.m., pursuant to the order adopted on February 23rd, 2017, the House will now proceed to the deferred recorded division on the motion of Mr. Poilievre concerning